The square echoed with the last words of the assassinated leader as his body fell, silence gripping the crowd like a vice. Jonathan Hale, the reluctant hero, felt his chest tighten as torches flickered in the dusk. Beside him, the innocent witness, a trembling boy named Samuel Reed, whispered, "He is gone. He is truly gone." Jonathan clenched his jaw, refusing to let grief cripple him. Eleanor Ward, the power-hungry opportunist, raised her hand and shouted for order, her voice sharp as a blade. Jonathan thought, her eyes gleamed not with sorrow, but with ambition. The betrayer within, Thomas Gray, lingered near Jonathan, offering false comfort with a hand on his shoulder. Yet Jonathan felt the weight of deceit in his friend's touch. Above them, the shadow figure watched from a balcony cloaked in mist, silent and unreadable. The square reeked of smoke and fear as history shifted in one violent moment. The square remained suspended in silence, until Eleanor's commanding voice pierced it. She said, "We must stand firm, or his death will be meaningless." Jonathan's heart twisted, sensing her words concealed ambition. The betrayer within shifted uneasily at his side, murmuring, "We must protect his legacy." Jonathan's gaze fell upon Samuel, whose tears streaked his dirt-stained cheeks. The boy whispered, "I saw the killer slip into the alley." Fear clutched his voice, but truth burned in his eyes. The shadow figure remained unseen, yet Jonathan felt his presence above like a weight. History's course had turned violently, and Jonathan realized he had little time to choose between despair and action. Jonathan forced his breath steady, his eyes darting to the alley Samuel had pointed out. He thought, if truth lies there, danger lies too. Thomas urged, "We should retreat to safety." Eleanor's sharp gaze pierced Jonathan as she declared, "Cowards run, leaders act." Her words stung, though he saw the hunger for power glinting beneath them. Samuel clutched his arm, trembling, whispering, "Please, don't let him escape." Above, unseen in the mist, the shadow figure shifted, silent observer to the storm. The sound of distant drums echoed, as though history itself marked the turning tide. Jonathan knew that safety meant nothing if truth was abandoned. The alley yawned before them like a throat-swallowing light. Jonathan led cautiously, heart pounding. Samuel whispered, "He went this way." Eleanor strode confidently, her cloak dragging through puddles. Thomas muttered, "This is madness." Jonathan glanced back, replying, "Madness is waiting for shadows to consume us." His voice trembled yet carried resolve. The air stank of damp stone and blood. Citizens peered from shuttered windows, their eyes wide with fear. The shadow figure's silhouette flickered briefly above rooftops before vanishing. Jonathan's mind screamed that each step might lead to ambush, yet the memory of the leader's final breath drove him forward. The group halted at a shadow-stained archway. Jonathan whispered, "He could be hiding here." Eleanor stepped forward boldly, hand on her dagger. Thomas protested, "We should turn back before we lose ourselves." Samuel clung to Jonathan's arm, his voice breaking. "I swear he came this way." The reluctant hero's chest ached with doubt, yet his voice hardened. "Then we see this through." The arch loomed like a maw, cold stone dripping with rain. A torch sputtered beside them, its flame bending in the wind. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the hiss of rain on stone. History waited inside the darkness. The narrow alley ended at a ruined courtyard, where silence pressed like a shroud. Jonathan Hale raised his hand, signaling the group to halt. His breath fogged in the damp night air as he whispered, "We are not alone here." Samuel Reed clutched his sleeve, fear etched on his face. Thomas Gray shifted nervously, muttering, "This place reeks of death." Eleanor Ward strode forward, torch in hand, declaring, "We waste time hiding. Power demands bold steps." Jonathan narrowed his eyes, sensing her hunger for control beneath the words. A distant creak echoed across the stones. Somewhere in the shadows, boots scraped faintly, like ghosts moving unseen. Jonathan thought, the killer hides close, but so does treachery. Jonathan led the group deeper into the courtyard, every step echoing like a warning. Samuel whispered, "I saw him vanish here." His words shook with terror, but certainty burned in his tone. Eleanor smiled thinly, replying, "Then we are closer than we thought." Thomas muttered, "Closer to death, perhaps." Jonathan silenced him with a glare. He could almost feel the eyes of the assassin in the dark corners. The shadow figure's presence seemed to hover in the mist, though unseen. Church bells tolled faintly in the distance, carried by the wind. Jonathan tightened his grip on his dagger, whispering to himself, "No turning back." The night itself seemed to hold its breath. The group paused as a faint figure darted between ruins, vanishing like smoke. Samuel gasped, clutching Jonathan's arm. "There, he moved!" Eleanor raised her chin, eyes narrowing. "Chase him before we lose him." Jonathan hesitated, hearing Thomas's warning. What if it's a trap? His heart pounded with indecision, yet the image of their fallen leader fueled him forward. Jonathan said, "If we falter, we surrender truth." The chase began, boots pounding stone, torches flickering wildly. Shadows swallowed the figure, pulling them deeper into danger. Overhead, clouds rumbled, thunder rolling like war drums. Jonathan felt history's weight pressing with each stride, whispering of betrayal near. The group burst into an abandoned chapel, its shattered windows rattling in the wind. Jonathan slowed, scanning the darkness. Samuel whimpered, "He was here, I swear." Eleanor smirked coldly, saying, "Or perhaps the boy's imagination betrays us." Thomas snapped, "Do not mock him." The air was thick with dust and damp stone. Jonathan whispered, "Quiet. Listen." A faint drip echoed, followed by a sudden rustle in the pews. Torches flickered violently, shadows dancing across broken icons. Jonathan's chest tightened, fear gnawing at him. Yet his voice steadied, "Whoever hides here, step forward." Only silence answered, heavy as a grave. Jonathan advanced toward the pews, torchlight shaking in his grip. Samuel clung to his sleeve, whispering, "Please, don't go closer." Eleanor barked, "Step aside, boy, or fear will strangle us all." Thomas muttered, "This is folly." Jonathan ignored them, his breath steady but shallow. His voice carried low, "If truth hides in shadows, then shadows must be faced." The torch revealed claw marks across the wood, and a blood-stained cloth crumpled on the floor. Samuel gasped, covering his mouth. Eleanor's eyes gleamed with opportunity, while Thomas turned pale. The air grew colder, as if unseen eyes watched their every move. The ruined chapel lay in silence as Jonathan Hale crouched near the blood-stained cloth, his thoughts racing. Samuel Reed whispered, "Why would he leave this behind?" His voice cracked with fear. Eleanor Ward's eyes glimmered in the torchlight as she replied, "Because he wanted us to follow." Her words dripped with cunning intent. Thomas Gray muttered, "Or because he knows we are too blind to see the trap." Jonathan clenched his jaw, saying, "Every sign carries meaning. We cannot dismiss it." The torch sputtered, shadows stretching across broken pews like skeletal fingers. Outside, thunder rolled closer, echoing history's relentless march toward confrontation. Jonathan rose slowly, his eyes fixed on Eleanor. He said, "You speak as though you know his path." Eleanor smirked, replying, "Perhaps I know ambition when I see it." Samuel tugged at Jonathan's sleeve, pleading, "Please, don't fight now." Thomas stepped forward, his voice low, "We are being watched. The assassin waits for division." Jonathan's heart tightened as he heard a faint rustle above, the shadow figure shifting unseen. The storm outside howled through shattered windows, carrying the scent of smoke. Jonathan thought, "Every word is a blade, and one cut may decide our fate." The chapel seemed smaller, suffocating under suspicion. Suddenly, Samuel gasped and pointed toward the altar, whispering, "I saw him behind the ruins." Jonathan turned sharply, dagger raised. Eleanor's cloak swirled as she advanced, saying, "Then let us corner him." Thomas grabbed Jonathan's arm, warning, it could be illusion. The boy trembled, yet his voice held conviction. "I swear on my life he was there." Jonathan's pulse hammered. He whispered, "Faith in truth is all we have left." They moved together, torchlight casting long, shifting shadows across the floor. Each step echoed like thunder, as though the chapel itself warned them. The moment quivered with anticipation. Betrayal coiled close. The group reached the altar, but no figure stood there. Samuel's face crumpled, whispering, "I swear he was here." Eleanor sneered, "The boy's fear clouds us all." Thomas growled, "You mock truth to hide your schemes." Jonathan silenced them with a sharp command. "Enough. Shadows deceive, but division will destroy us faster." His voice carried authority, though doubt gnawed at his heart. A crash above made dust fall from beams. Jonathan glanced upward, glimpsing the faint silhouette of the shadow figure slipping between rafters. His mind screamed with questions. Was this protector or foe? The storm outside howled louder, rattling broken doors. Jonathan stepped closer to the altar, his dagger gleaming under trembling firelight. He whispered, "This place holds answers, or graves." Samuel pressed close, shivering with fear. Eleanor declared, "If the assassin hides, we must draw him out." Thomas muttered, "And lose our throats in the process." Jonathan closed his eyes briefly, remembering the leader's final breath, and said, "We carry his legacy into the dark, not away from it." The storm outside reached a fever pitch, lightning flashing through the broken windows. For a moment, the entire chapel blazed in pale blue light, revealing every fearful face, every hidden doubt. The storm raged as Jonathan Hale pushed open the chapel's side door, revealing a torchlit corridor of broken stone. Samuel Reed whispered, "Why does it feel colder here?" Eleanor Ward stepped boldly forward, replying, "Because truth chills the weak." Her words carried venom wrapped in confidence. Thomas Gray muttered, "This path reeks of betrayal." Jonathan tightened his grip on his dagger and said, "Betrayal walks among us, but justice follows close." Shadows danced along the damp walls, dripping with water from the storm. Above them, unseen but present, the shadow figure lingered, his movements deliberate, watching their every step. The corridor opened into a hall filled with shattered banners and broken shields. Jonathan's breath caught as he whispered, "This was once their gathering place." Samuel's eyes widened. "It feels cursed." Eleanor smirked and said, "Curses are for children. Power lingers where leaders fall." Thomas frowned, his voice sharp, and ambition feeds on graves. Jonathan's pulse quickened as he noticed faint footprints in the dust leading deeper. The shadow figure's silhouette flickered briefly against a cracked pillar before vanishing again. Jonathan murmured, "We are not alone." The torches hissed in the damp air, and the sound of distant footsteps echoed faintly. Jonathan crouched near the footprints, his fingers brushing the dust. He whispered, "These prints are fresh." Samuel gasped, "Then he is close." Eleanor's smile widened, her cloak shimmering in torchlight. "Then the hunt sharpens." Thomas growled, "Or he lures us deeper into his snare." Jonathan stood firm, his voice steady. "We must face him, trap or not." The torches flickered violently as if the storm itself pushed against the walls. Dust swirled around their feet, and every creak of the hall boards echoed louder than words. Jonathan's heart knew danger was close, but his resolve burned brighter than fear. The hall fell silent as a low creak sounded from above. Jonathan glanced upward, catching a fleeting glimpse of the shadow figure's cloak before it vanished into the rafters. Samuel whispered, "Who is he?" Eleanor narrowed her eyes and said, "A spy, or worse." Thomas clenched his fists, muttering, "He toys with us." Jonathan raised his dagger, declaring, "Whoever he is, his secrets will end tonight." The torchlight sputtered, casting wild patterns across the floor. Thunder shook the walls, rattling broken banners. Jonathan felt the weight of unseen eyes pressing heavily against his back. Truth hung on a knife's edge. Jonathan advanced toward the center of the hall, his voice carrying steel. "We reveal truth tonight." Samuel clung to his sleeve, whispering, "I fear the truth will destroy us." Eleanor laughed sharply, declaring, "Then let it destroy the weak." Thomas stepped closer, his tone strained, "And what if the betrayer stands among us?" Silence crushed the hall, and Jonathan's chest ached with dread. He glanced at each face. Samuel's innocence, Eleanor's ambition, Thomas's unease, and new betrayal hid nearby. Lightning burst through a crack in the ceiling, flooding the hall with pale fire. For an instant, every mask seemed to slip. The ruined hall quaked with thunder as Jonathan Hale stepped forward, dagger in hand, his voice fierce. "No more shadows, truth must burn tonight." Samuel Reed whimpered, "The storm feels alive, pressing against us." Eleanor Ward smirked, cloak swirling as she declared, "Storms cleanse the weak and crown the bold." Thomas Gray clenched his fists, muttering, "Your ambition drips louder than rain." The torches flared, casting violent shadows across the cracked banners. From beyond the shattered door, the sound of armored boots thundered. Jonathan's chest tightened as realization struck. Soldiers marched closer. Betrayal had opened the gates, and fire would follow. The doors burst open, and armored soldiers stormed in with torches blazing. Jonathan shouted, "Hold your ground!" Samuel shrieked, clinging tighter. Eleanor lifted her chin, saying coldly, "History welcomes those who seize its hour." Thomas cursed, "You led them here." Jonathan's dagger gleamed as he faced the first soldier, his voice raw, "If blood seals the truth, then let it spill." Steel clashed as the first strike rang through the hall. Sparks lit the shadows as chaos consumed the silence. Jonathan's heart thundered, his every breath tasting of iron and smoke. This was no longer a hunt, this was war. Jonathan parried a soldier's strike, sparks leaping into the storm-lit air. Samuel screamed, "Jonathan!" Eleanor's laughter cut through the clamor as she said, "Yes, let the fire decide who rules." Thomas hurled a broken shield aside, spitting, "You betrayed us, Eleanor." She snapped back, "I only betrayed the weak." Jonathan's breath came heavy, his blade dripping with sweat and blood. He shouted, "No crown forged in treachery can endure." The soldiers pressed harder, forcing them back toward the altar. The air stank of smoke and burning cloth. The storm outside roared like drums of war, matching each desperate strike. The battle raged as Jonathan pushed back with raw fury. Samuel huddled against the altar, sobbing, "Stop this, please." Eleanor struck a soldier with ruthless precision, her eyes gleaming. She cried, "Only strength writes history." Thomas staggered, blood trickling from his brow, shouting, "Then history will curse your name." Jonathan's dagger pierced another soldier, his voice breaking, "No legacy survives in ash." The torches fell, igniting splintered wood across the floor. Smoke thickened, filling lungs with fire. Outside, lightning cracked, revealing the shadow figure at the doorway, watching in silence. Jonathan felt his presence like a blade behind his spine. Flames roared as the hall became a furnace of chaos. Jonathan's lungs burned, yet he roared, "We fight not for crowns, but for truth." Samuel's cries pierced the smoke, "Don't let them kill us." Eleanor's face glistened with firelight as she declared, "Truth dies with the weak, and power belongs to me." Thomas raised a broken sword, muttering, "Then I choose to defy you." Jonathan's blade clashed with steel once more, sparks raining like stars. Above them, the roof cracked, stones falling under the storm's fury. History's weight pressed, and betrayal's fire consumed all who stood beneath it. The flames hissed as rain poured through the shattered roof, drenching fire and ash alike. Jonathan Hale gasped for breath, his dagger trembling in his hand. Samuel Reed clung to him, crying, "We cannot survive this." Eleanor Ward raised her chin defiantly, declaring, "Survival is for those strong enough to claim it." Thomas Gray stepped forward, his face pale and sweat-streaked, shouting, "Enough lies! She is no savior, she is the betrayer." Jonathan froze as the words struck like steel. Eleanor's smirk sharpened, her eyes glittering. She replied at last, "The mask breaks, and you, Thomas, were never meant to speak truth." Jonathan's breath caught as he whispered, "Thomas, what truth do you carry?" Thomas' eyes welled with guilt as he confessed, "I served them. I opened the doors. The soldiers came because of me." Samuel gasped, trembling, "You betrayed us." Eleanor laughed coldly, her voice cutting through the storm. At last the rat shows his teeth. Jonathan's dagger lowered, fury blazing in his eyes. You, my brother in arms, sold us to death. Thomas fell to his knees, muttering, I was forced. They threatened my family. The storm's thunder cracked, drowning his words. Jonathan's heart split between rage and sorrow. The shadow figure stepped into the ruined hall, his cloak dripping with storm water. His voice echoed low, the truth is heavier than any blade. Jonathan turned sharply, demanding, Who are you? The figure lowered his hood, revealing a scarred face, older and weary. He said, I protected the leader once. Now I protect his legacy. Samuel whispered in awe, You knew him? Eleanor sneered, another ghost clinging to ashes. The man's eyes hardened, replying, No. I am the wall between memory and oblivion. Jonathan's chest tightened as hope and suspicion collided, each moment sharper than the storm outside. Jonathan's voice thundered, If truth is revealed, then speak now. The shadow figure's gaze swept across them, finally settling on Eleanor. He said, The assassin you hunt. She stands before you. Samuel recoiled, whispering, Eleanor. Eleanor laughed, her tone venomous. Do not tremble, boy. I ended him because he was weak. Jonathan staggered back, his pulse hammering. Thomas raised his head, muttering, So all this was your design. Eleanor raised her arms defiantly, flames behind her casting her in gold. History bends to those who seize it. I carved my name in blood. The hall vibrated with tension. Jonathan roared, You murdered him, and now you dare to claim his throne. Eleanor stepped forward, fire blazing in her eyes. I claimed the future. He clung to the past. Samuel shouted, tears streaming, You killed hope. Thomas whispered, Broken, and I helped her. Jonathan's dagger rose again, his arm trembling, his voice raw. Then tonight, justice will be written in fire. The shadow figure's cloak swirled as he murmured, Choose carefully, Jonathan, for history remembers only victors. Lightning split the roof again, flooding them all in pale blue light as blades rose for the final clash. The storm roared as Jonathan Hale stood face to face with Eleanor Ward, fire and lightning colliding around them. Samuel Reed sobbed, Please, no more death. Eleanor's eyes burned with triumph as she hissed, Weakness begs, power takes. Thomas Gray whispered from the floor, End her, Jonathan, or she will end us all. Jonathan's heart throbbed with rage and sorrow, his dagger trembling. The shadow figure's voice echoed, History waits for your hand. Jonathan cried, Then let it wait no longer. He lunged, steel flashing. Sparks and blood lit the ruin, and history shifted in that single strike. Eleanor staggered as Jonathan's blade cut across her side. She cried out but laughed bitterly, Blood writes my crown. Samuel shouted, You will not take his dream. Thomas crawled forward, gasping, Her dream is only ruin. Eleanor's hand gripped her wound, yet her eyes glimmered with defiance. Jonathan roared, The leader's vision will live, not through fear, but through sacrifice. The shadow figure raised his voice, Then seal it now, before her poison spreads. Thunder shook the earth as Jonathan advanced, blade dripping, his every step heavy with grief. Eleanor sneered through pain, Kill me, and become me. Jonathan froze, Eleanor's words gnawing at his soul. Samuel cried, You are not her, Jonathan. Thomas coughed, Be better than us all. Jonathan's dagger shook, torn between vengeance and legacy. The shadow figure said coldly, Mercy weakens. Strike her down. Eleanor raised her chin, whispering, One day, they will call you tyrant as they called me. Jonathan closed his eyes, the leader's voice echoing in memory. Justice without mercy is only another blade. Tears mixed with rain on his face as he whispered, I will not be you. He lowered the dagger slowly, breath heavy with final resolve. Eleanor laughed bitterly, coughing blood. Then you are weaker than I thought. She collapsed to the floor, her defiance flickering like a dying flame. Samuel rushed to Jonathan, sobbing, You chose right. Thomas whispered, "Mercy is heavier than vengeance." The shadow figure turned away, muttering, "Perhaps hope survives after all." Jonathan's knees buckled, grief breaking him. He whispered to himself, "The leader's dream must outlive the blood." Outside, dawn broke, golden light piercing the storm clouds. For the first time, warmth touched the shattered hall, painting ruins with fragile hope. The hall fell silent, but for the crack of fading fire. Jonathan placed his dagger on the ground, whispering, "No crown, no throne, only memory." Samuel pressed a blood-stained letter to Jonathan's hand, saying, "He wanted you to have this." Jonathan unfolded it, the leader's final words trembling in his grip. His breath broke as he read aloud, "Hope lives not in rulers, but in those who choose to stand." Tears blurred his vision. He placed the letter on the altar, bowing his head. The shadow figure's cloak rustled as he vanished into dawn. Jonathan walked into the smoke, legacy burning in silence.